They say every crime has an answer, that every mystery eventually finds its ending. But what if I told you there's a case so disturbing, so layered, that even decades later police quietly admit they never truly understood what happened? And tonight, as you hear this story, you might realize why. It began as one of the most ordinary days imaginable. The kind of day no one remembers until everything goes wrong. A quiet suburban neighborhood, tree-lined streets, families going about their routines, doors left unlocked because nothing bad ever happened there. That's what people said afterward. Nothing bad ever happened here. Until it did. At exactly 6:42 a.m., an emergency call came in. The caller was shaking, struggling to form sentences. Inside a modest two-story home, something was terribly wrong. When officers arrived, they found a scene that made even seasoned detectives stop at the doorway. A man in his early 40s lay on the living room floor, unresponsive. There were no obvious signs of forced entry. No blood. No overturned furniture. No weapon in sight. Just silence, and a sense that something didn't belong. At first glance, it looked like a sudden medical emergency. Paramedics confirmed he was dead. Time of death was estimated sometime during the night. His wife said she heard nothing. The neighbors heard nothing. No alarms, no screams, no struggle. And yet, as investigators would soon discover, this was no natural death. The autopsy revealed something deeply unsettling. The cause of death was poisoning, but not the kind that shows up easily. It was a rare compound, one not commonly found, one that required knowledge, access, and precision. This wasn't an accident. This was intentional. And suddenly, the question changed from how did he die to who could possibly do this without leaving a trace. Police began where they always do, with the people closest to him. His wife of 15 years appeared cooperative, devastated even. She had an alibi, sort of. She said she went to bed early, exhausted from work, and didn't notice anything unusual. Her phone activities supported her claim. No suspicious calls. No strange messages. Nothing that screamed guilt. Then there were the children, too young to understand what was happening, let alone be involved. That line of inquiry ended quickly, but it left investigators with a chilling realization. Whoever did this knew the house, knew the routine, knew how to move silently in the dark. Friends and coworkers were questioned next. The victim was described as quiet, reliable, and remarkable. No known enemies. No financial troubles. No history of violence. But as detectives dug deeper, cracks began to appear in the perfect image. It turned out he had recently been involved in something complicated. At work, he'd raised concerns about irregularities, numbers that didn't add up, decisions that made no sense. He wasn't a whistleblower, not officially, but he'd ask questions. The kind of questions that make people uncomfortable. The kind of questions that don't always go unanswered. Could someone from his workplace have followed him home? Possibly. But there were no cameras capturing suspicious vehicles. No witnesses seeing unfamiliar faces. And again, no forced entry. Whoever poisoned him didn't break in. They were either invited or already inside. Police then focused on the poison itself. It wasn't something you could buy at a local store. It required specialized access. Medical facilities, research labs, or certain industries. That narrowed the suspect pool, but not enough. Too many people had access. Too many possibilities. Here's where the case takes its first dark turn. A toxicology expert reviewing the evidence noticed something unusual. The dosage was precise. Not too much. Not too little. It was calculated to kill slowly, hours after ingestion, meaning the victim likely went to bed feeling fine, unaware that his body was already shutting down. Whoever did this didn't want chaos. They wanted certainty, control, and time. So how was it administered? The answer was hiding in plain sight. A mug was found in the kitchen sink. Cleaned, but not perfectly. Trace residue was discovered inside. The poison had been mixed into a drink, something warm, something familiar. Something he trusted enough to consume without hesitation. Who made that drink? His wife said she didn't. She hadn't been in the kitchen that night. She was sure of it. But certainty in memory doesn't always mean truth. Investigators pressed harder. Ray interviewed. Reconstructed timelines. And that's when inconsistencies started to surface. Small ones. Easy to dismiss. But when placed side by side, they formed a pattern. A phone call that lasted longer than she initially claimed. A late-night trip downstairs she first forgot, then remembered. A statement that changed, just slightly, each time it was repeated. Still, there was no direct evidence tying her to the poison. No purchase records. No fingerprints. No motive strong enough to convince a jury. Suspicion alone isn't proof, and police knew that better than anyone. Then, just as the investigation seemed to stall, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived at the police station. It was unsigned, typed. No return address. Inside, the writer claimed to know what really happened that night. They described details that had never been released to the public. Details only the killer or investigators could know. And then came the most chilling line of all. You're looking in the wrong place. He was never meant to die that way. What did that mean? Police attempted to trace the letter, but it led nowhere. No fingerprints, no DNA. No digital trail. It was as if the letter had appeared from thin air. Some detectives believed it was a hoax. Others weren't so sure. The accuracy of certain details was impossible to ignore. The case took another turn when a former colleague of the victim came forward, claiming the victim had confided in him weeks before his death. He said he felt watched, followed, that someone wanted him to stop asking questions. At the time, it sounded paranoid. After the murder, it sounded prophetic. Investigators revisited the workplace angle with renewed intensity. They uncovered internal conflicts, power struggles, financial incentives worth millions. People who stood to gain if certain issues stayed buried. But again, nothing concrete tied any one person to the poison. Years passed. The case grew cold, but it never truly closed. Detectives rotated. New theories emerged. Old ones resurfaced. Each time someone thought they were close, the truth slipped through their fingers. One theory suggested the poison wasn't meant for him at all. That someone else was the intended target. A mistake. A miscalculation. But that theory fell apart when experts confirmed the dosage was tailored to his body weight. Another theory claimed the wife had an accomplice. Someone who provided the poison, someone who helped cover it up. But without evidence, it remains speculation. The most unsettling theory of all was this, that the killer was interviewed, questioned, and dismissed early on. That the truth was spoken directly to investigators and went unnoticed. So let me ask you this. If you were on that jury, with no smoking gun, no confession, only shadows and unanswered questions, could you deliver a verdict? Could you live with knowing someone got away with murder, or that an innocent person was forever suspected? To this day, the case remains officially unsolved. The file sits in a cabinet, thick with reports, interviews, and theories. Occasionally, a new detective pulls it out, convinced they'll be the one to finally understand what everyone else missed. But understanding isn't the same as proving. And maybe that's what makes this case so haunting. Not the violence. Not even the betrayal. But the idea that the truth might be known by someone, somewhere, who has never spoken. Or worse, someone who did and was never believed. Because the most terrifying crimes aren't the ones with monsters hiding in the dark. They're the ones that happen quietly, calmly, inside places we call home, carried out by people we trust, and left behind as puzzles no one can fully solve. So, as you sit with this story, ask yourself one final question. If justice depends on certainty, what happens when certainty never comes? And how many other truths are buried not because they're hidden, but because they're too uncomfortable to accept?